All right, welcome back to the Ottawa studios of Inside My Canoe Head. I am your host, Dr. D. Today, we have Season 10 introduction, new format, so sit back, grab yourself your favorite beverage. Let's get at it. All right, welcome to Season 10. For all of you that have been here with us since April of 2020, since the first episode, welcome to Season 10. For those of you that are new, I'm glad you joined us here. Our last episode was episode number 250, and now we're at episode 251, the count to 500. So we started Season 10. This season is going to be slightly different, organized in a different format. We're going to have three distinct type of podcast episodes for you. We're going to talk about news, discussion of events that are happening, and how that reflects on your world, your viewpoint, and your preparedness. We're going to look at some interviews. We're going to get some great, fantastic human beings lined up to have some conversations about topics in general related to preparedness, but also about topics that are important to us today in our modern interconnected society. And the last one I think is going to be really interesting for the audience this season is going to be scenarios. So we're going to talk about walking through the reality of something, not the apocalyptic version, but we're going to talk about the aspects of that and why it is what you see on TV. But we're going to talk about scenario-driven ideas. So I think that's going to bring you a lot of joy, happiness, and a lot of great background stuff as you go about your day and tackle whatever you're after and chase your dreams. So thank you very much once again for staying with us throughout this long journey. For all of you who continue to drop us a feedback at insidemycanoehead.ca, greatly appreciate it. Keep it coming. The podcast only grows because you share it, and the one ask we have for you is to tell somebody that we're out there. So with that, let's talk about what's going on in the news today. I think it leads everybody's newscast today, as it should, is the horrific video of the bridge collapse in the United States of America, where the container ship hits a bridge and takes it down at 5 o'clock in the morning, where likely the traffic was less. They've activated what they believe to be a mass casualty situation. And really, this is one of those exogenous shocks that we continuously talk about on the podcast, right? The state of preparedness is to get you in the best possible position. So when an exogenous shock happens, and the exogenous shock is simply something that happens that is beyond your control, which means you didn't initiate it. You have no control over what happens, i.e., you can't make it less or more impactful in the general public, and that it influences your ability to conduct normal operations. So if you think about just the regular folks who were on that bridge at 5 o'clock in the morning, commuting to their early job or coming home from the night shift, doing nothing out of the ordinary, and they were struck by an immediate exogenous shock that significantly impacted their lives. That is what preparedness is meant to do. Sure, if all of a sudden the bridge is not available to you and you're late for work, I'm sure your boss is going to be very thankful that you weren't on the bridge and quite accommodating as the world in that city tries to figure out how to navigate this and try to set up, because those bridges will take years to put back into place. The whole concept here is, what has preparedness got to do with a bridge collapse? Well, let's put it this way. We've argued and continue to argue that the number one thing that you need to take care of in emergency preparedness is you, right? Your physical, your mental, and your financial health are the most important things that you can invest in preparedness, far more than any ridiculously dumb piece of equipment you can buy off the internet and pile in your basement. That's just logic. Evidence tells us that that's true. But this situation amplifies it. Follow me for a second. You don't know whether you survive that fall in the car to the water, right? You don't know. That's beyond your control. Hopefully you're smart enough to be wearing your seatbelt. Hopefully you're in a serviceable car. I don't know how to tell you how to get out of a car that's floating in water, okay? There's lots of experts on YouTube that have that I'm not going to put myself at risk by trying to tell you how to get out of it. But what I will tell you, what is probably the most likely influential piece of reality when you're put in a situation like that is your physical fitness. How strong are you? How robust are your muscles? How strong is your ability to fight against the weight of water, to fight against the current, to drag yourself out of a partially wrecked vehicle as it's sinking in water? That is brute physical force. That is physical fitness. That is preparedness. That is something you do in the times of peace and calm. Your mental health. Are you in reasonably good control of your mental and emotional management, right? Emotional regulation, as they call it, emotional intelligence. You know, your anxiety goes through the roof, right? Absolutely. Fight or flight kicks in. These are all autonomic systems that happen in your body. But when you hit that water and you have to make decisions, you know, your seatbelt is jammed. Do you have a seatbelt cutter in the car? Do you have a knife in the car? These are logical thoughts that you walk through when you have emotional intelligence and control. When you have strong physical fitness, you're able to likely deal. Now, none of this is going to guarantee that any of us get out of any situation. But what preparedness does, it increases the probability and the likelihood that your outcome is going to be more positive. That's what you contribute to. It's a scale. I keep talking about the spectrum. Everything is on a spectrum. Very little of what happens in preparedness is a binary decision, which means the answer is yes or no. You survive or you don't, right? Everything is on a scale, and what preparedness does in general is influence that. So that's just a prime example of you are dropped into a situation beyond your control. You had no responsibility in initiating it. You can't influence it. And on the spot, as I say in this podcast repeatedly, come as you are, right? That's not the time to decide that I need better physical fitness, you know, that I can't fit out the window of my car. All of these things are within your influence. So that's just an idea of the type of things that we're going to talk about coming up when we talk about news and discussions and ideas, and start to think about that's a reflection. And I hope everybody makes it, and I sincerely hope and pray that they do. And then I hope when you reflect on incidents like this, and this is the idea of preparedness, right, is your ability to reflect on incidents in which you weren't involved, right? We often say, in you look at legal cases, they say there's general and specific deterrence. Specific deterrence is against the individual. General deterrence is about, I'm going to give a penalty to the individual at a court because I want general deterrence, right? I want the general public to understand that we will apply a significant sanction to an individual who breaks one of our laws, right? So you reflect upon that. I'm probably not going to do this activity because in general, and everybody gets caught, they're going to put a significant sanction on me. So even if it breaks my moralistic plane and I think about doing it anyhow, I'm probably not going to do it because of the general deterrence factor of sentencing. Now, the same thing occurs when you look at events that don't injure you, right? Think about worldly events. Right now, the world has a lot of conflict. You have the conflict ongoing in the Gaza Strip. You have the conflict ongoing in eastern Ukraine. You have conflict that's ongoing in Southeast Asia. Throughout the world, there are areas of active conflict that are ongoing right now. And in the middle are caught a whole bunch of innocent civilians that really have nothing to do, irrespective of whichever side they support. They're caught in the middle, and a lot of times they simply don't have a place to go, and they're facing the direct effects of armed conflict. If you're not one of those people, that's time to reflect and consider, what lessons can I take away? What lessons can I learn from events that are happening around the world, right? So you'll reflect, ask yourself, can I drag myself out of the window of my car? Do I know how to get out of a car if it's caught in, this is something that happens a lot in flash flooding because of burst rainstorms that happen in the southern U.S. and in parts of Canada, right? So this is a real life skill. How do I get my arse out of a sinking car, right? How do I do that? That's a skill that you can learn. It doesn't cost any money. There's some very good, now please take the time to make sure your source should be a good source and is a viable source. But even local fire departments offer this free training, or that agree to create the free training if you and members of your community are interested to learn how to do this. The skill doesn't cost anything to learn. But when you learn how to do it and you think about the skill and you talk about how you would do it, then when an event happens like that, you already have an autonomic response built into your system, and you are more than likely increasing your probability of survival, right? So if you try one of these people, you get swept away. People get swept away in flash floods. They didn't do anything wrong, right? They didn't make bad choices. They just got hit with a situation that was beyond your control. We've all seen those pictures of cars floating down the river with people in them, right? That's not the time to try to figure out, how do I get out of a moving car, right? When it's filling full of water. That's a skill you can learn in preparedness, right? So you're asking yourself, like, how do I learn 1,000,000,001 skills? Well, how I learn and what works for me is I'm a bit of a news junkie, right? So I pay attention to significant events and things like that. And then I look at the event and I try to go, wow, what would I do in that? And do I know how to react to that? And if I don't know how to react to that, I add it to my repertoire, right? I'm not actively in a terrified situation running around trying to find a bunch of disasters to learn from. What I'm doing is I'm taking other people's experiences and I'm hoisting aboard the lessons learned, right? So whether it's the bridge collapse, whether it's a flash flood, whether it's a torrential rainstorm, whether it's an aftermath of a tornado, these events are occurring. I'm learning through other people's experiences. I'm looking to learn. I live in an area that is an active tornado. We get about 6 to 8 of them in a calendar year, which is far less than the South. Ours are not that severe. They're only up to about an F2. But I do live in a tornado zone. Like, how am I going to react when I get a tornado warning, right? I know that, right? I've learned. I'm not an expert in that. So what did I do? I don't know how to do something. I don't know what the best strategy is for my family based on where I live and the type of accommodation I'm in. What should I do? So I went and found that information from a reputable source. We talk about it as a family. Now everybody understands. At the beginning of tornado season, we probably have that conversation as part of our monthly preparedness plan review, right? And so it's not any more challenging than that. It's about learning from the world around you, right? And what we also have to reflect on, and this is something else that I think is important, it's a bit of a segue, but if you look at society as it changes around us, right? The situations that we're facing change. How we live in this society changes. And I want to talk a bit today about societal structure and the change in earning income opportunities. We see that inflation is high. People are under significant economic pressure. As I advocate here, we go back to what I started the podcast on, right? I mean, it's about your physical, your mental, and your financial health. The three things are absolutely 100% within your control and is nobody else's responsibility to nail, right? So we talked about your physical health. Obviously, that helps out when you're swimming in water. We got to talk about your mental health. If you have reasonable emotional control, then the likelihood of you having emotional regulation in high stress environments are better. It's never perfect, but it gets better. But your financial situation is under pressure, right? And we talk about it at length in many of our previous seasonal episodes and in our book, Preparedness Simplified, Book 1, The Beginning. It's available on our website, preparednesslabs.ca. It's available over on Amazon as well. Is the first rule of finance, and actually it's the only rule of money, right? There is only one rule of money. I talk about several steps, but there's one rule of money, right? Spend less than you earn. And if you spend less than you earn, you'll never need savings and you'll never need any other money because you simply always spend less than you earn. I know it sounds basic and easy, but it really is that easy. But one of the elements we talk about in our more detailed analysis on financial and into our trifecta of preparedness plans, the beginning of you generating and adopting a prepared life, is your economic plan, right? What happens when you get fired? Your ability to pivot. And today we're looking at society turning more and more towards a recession. Now, I am a partially trained economist, but I am not an official employed economist, but I have a significant enough training in the economic systems and experience working in economic systems that we're getting close to a recession because we're starting to see an increase in unemployment. As we start to see an increase in unemployment, it's a relationship common with a recession. In fact, it is the very definition of a recessionary period. It goes back to what we've talked about many times in this podcast, the positive versus normative viewpoint, right? The positivism talks about the viewpoint of the world, that you see the world as it is. Nobody's asking you whether you like it, right? Nobody actually really cares whether you like what's going on in the world. But the fact is you deal with the world as it is, right? It is what it is. You know that saying that everybody says? That's a positive viewpoint. When you follow a normative viewpoint, you have a view of what the world should be. And we have friends that are like this all the time. I wish it was like this. The world should be this. The government should do this. Everybody should be able to do this. Housing is a human right. Everybody should have housing. Those are people that live in a normative view, right? They look at everything through the lenses they think the world should be, not as the world is, right? The world is not Ward Cleaver and Leave It to Beaver. If you don't know that reference and you're a little bit younger than I am, Google Ward Cleaver and Leave It to Beaver is the series name, right? And so the idea being is that was when we had the nuclear family. Mom stayed home, raised the kids, dad went out, earned an income. One income was enough to have a couple of vacations, a car in the driveway, a nice house in the suburbs. Everybody was comfortable. Everybody went to school. You could send your kids to university, right? We now live in a gig economy. We live in an economy now where you're trading your labor and your skills for money on short-term contracts with any significant benefits or pensions, right? It is a complete switch. Now, you can bemoan the fact that you don't have a Ward Cleaver type of pension and job, and you can live in the normative world and stomp your feet that you just don't have the entitlements that you think you're entitled to. Or on the other hand, you can say, from a positive viewpoint, this is the world I live in. I don't have to like it, but I better be damn sure that I'm able to financially navigate this sucker and extract the value that I want and that my family needs so that I can live the lifestyle I want, raise the family in the way I want to, and basically enjoy the time we're here on this earth within the positive viewpoint. That doesn't mean you don't push for issues you believe in, etc. So this really puts you down to three choices. And I divide your options in life to three, right? You have the option of earning a salary, and that goes down one of two things. Salary is your basically, and Mr. Wonderful, Kevin O'Leary is famous for saying, salary is the drug they give you to give up on your dreams, right? Some people want to live a life where they earn a salary from a company, they trade their labor for time, and they get money for it, right? That's a salary. Other people on the salary, and this is why I separate it, have a demonstrable, movable, mobile trade skill, right? So this would be your heavy equipment mechanic. This is your electrician. This is your plumber. This is somebody who has a skill that's transferable not only to a different corporation, but the skill is transferable to a different location, right? So if you're an electrician in the United States of America and you have in Canada here, it's called a red seal. So it's the ability to move anywhere in the country and be employed as an electrician without having to write any additional exams or certify in a new state, etc., right? So you have the ability, right? So you have a skill. You do trade it, your time and energy, for a salary, but if the world's not going good, you don't have to stop being an electrician. You just stop being an electrician where you are and you move to a different opportunity for an electrician. So that's different than somebody who is working at a job for a salary, and that job, they get fired from that job, or that job ceases to exist for any number of economic reasons. Now they have to go learn a new skill to get another job, right? You see, so those two salaries are significantly different. The other one is entrepreneurial, where you've decided that My future is up to me. You cannot get wealthy off a salary. You can get rich if you get, a surgeon's type salary of $400,000, $500,000, $600,000 a year. You can be rich, but you can't be wealthy off of a salary. Now, you're going to argue with me that there's 3 or 4 CEOs. Okay, I'm talking about the general path. You cannot become wealthy off of a salary. You can become rich if you're very good with money, and later in your life, you work your way up to a certain level in a corporation or an organization, but you'll only be wealthy and create wealth for your family and generational wealth for your grandkids through entrepreneurial enterprise and starting a business, right? So we're going to look at that in the future. We've got a couple of episodes planned in Inside My Canoe Head here to talk about the value of entrepreneurship to preparedness, right? Because again, you're in the gig economy. The normative people want you to just have one job, go to work, get a salary, raise a family, never get fired, and live this wonderful protected life. You're in a gig economy, which means you're likely to get fired in a reasonable amount of time, and it is your responsibility, again, back to preparedness, right? Personal responsibility. It's your ability to be able to pivot to a new employment when you get fired, right? It's not somebody else's job to hand you a new job when this one gets pulled out from underneath you. The gig economy sees, I grew up in a generation, I'm in my early 50s, right? I grew up in a generation where people started a job and they would work it for 30 years and retire. Now you're looking at your kids, like my kids are in their early 20s. They're probably going to have 5 or 6 or 7 different significant careers before they hit age 65, right? That's a positivism viewpoint. That's the world as it is. It doesn't matter whether you agree with it, but this is the world. So the gig economy means you're going to move, which means you always have to be thinking what I'm going to do next when I get fired from this role. Look, there's a lot of great tech sector people who have a great set of skills that keep getting fired because the tech sector is a boom and bust, which means there's a hiring boom. There's 3 to 4 years of great growth in certain industries and a lot of money to be made, and then the arse falls out of her and there's nothing else left. So they have to be pivotable and mobile. And entrepreneurial, what it does is it takes that away, right? I own my business, and it's really, really simple. I'm a huge follower of Alex Hormozi. I'm reading his book right now, The $100 Million Leads, and I follow his podcast, The Game, all the time. And basically what this guy talks about is the very simplistic idea of entrepreneurship and being successful, right? I have to create something or make something that people want to buy. I have to sell it for more than it costs me to make, and then I have to do that hundreds and millions of times. It's really that simple, right? So you have to find, to be an entrepreneur, you have to find a problem that society has. You have to find a unique and innovative way to solve it. You have to create an offer that is so ridiculously good that people will feel stupid for not giving you their money. And then you have to repeat that dozens and hundreds of times over, and you make an income. The ability of you to do that exists, right? A lot of people will say, well, I don't know how to do that. Well, listen, I'm learning how to be an entrepreneur. Now, I'm fortunate because I'm a veteran, a very proud veteran of the Canadian Army. And I just had an opportunity to finish something called the Legacy Boot Camp. And this is a veterans boot camp put on by the Canadian Legacy Project. And it was a serial couple of month-long course about how to become an entrepreneur, how to build a one-page business plan with a lot of great feedback, a lot of peer review in a room of, a couple of dozen entrepreneur or veterans like yourself or like me who are trying to be entrepreneurs or who are interested in the entrepreneurial journey and really don't know how to start. Where do they begin? What do they learn? It can't teach you everything about, insurance. It can't teach you everything about the rules related to starting a company in the country you're in, etc. But you go through this training, and there's a lot of it that's free on YouTube. And there's a lot of organizations out there, entrepreneurial organizations that give back. Basically what it is within the gig economy, again, the reality, whether you like it or not, is having some type of an entrepreneurial venture. Like in Canada, there's an estimated something like 1.5 million corporations that are here in the country. There's only 40 million people, right? So you're thinking a corporation is all these. No. If you knit doilies and sell them on eBay, you should have a corporation, not a sole proprietorship. And there's a whole bunch of rules for that. So we're going to get into that when it talks. Why does preparedness matter in that? Because a key part of preparedness, and I return to this regularly, is financial preparedness, right? Is creating a robust income stream that allows you to insulate against exogenous shocks, right? When you get fired, I argue repeatedly that a family who loses their primary income is just as impacted as a family whose freaking house burnt down. And nobody thinks that's preparedness. I think actually losing your job has far more to do with preparedness than a disaster, right? Preparedness is grounded right now in its common mindset of disasters. And I'm hauling that out of there and saying, actually, no, preparedness is a lens for life. Preparedness is saying, I want to make sure that I am in control of my destiny, and whatever the world throws at me, and if we look at the 2020s, we know it's not getting any better. I want to be able to be the steerer of my ship. I want to be responsible for my family and those for whom I am responsible, and those who will look to me in times of discomfort and disruption. I want to be able to provide for them, right? So entrepreneurial does that. There's a lot of things we're going to talk about, but that's just an idea of what we have outlined for you in season 10 coming up over the next, couple of months before we roll out season 11. Again, just a quick review. We're going to talk about news, general discussion about events that are happening in the world, and how does that reflect on preparedness. We're going to look at interviews. We've got some great folks lined up to talk about the reality of on-the-ground truths of preparedness in today's world, and from people who are trying to execute it from a public sector and a private sector perspective. And then we're going to talk about scenarios. We've got some interesting ideas of walking you through scenarios as they happen, walking through events, and then talking about different options and opportunities you may have. So hopefully you find that interesting. Keep the feedback coming. We very much appreciate it. I had somebody come out the other day. I ran into them, a gentleman by the name of Rich, and he was saying, like, you have any merch, stuff like that. I'm like, you know what? The best thing you can do if you're a supporter of Inside My Canoe Head, if you believe in our mission and you want to hear more of us, is to tell somebody else about us. It's really that simple. We have a website, insidemycanoehead.ca. Go there. Everything that you need is there. And tell somebody else about us. Reach out. Tell a friend that this is something they may be interested in listening to. It's really that simple. I have but one ask, is tell somebody else about the podcast. If you love it, tell somebody else. If you don't like it, tell me. You can drop me an email at jeff@preparednesslabs.ca. Anytime. I respond to 98.8% of the emails. There's a little over 1% that, due to the content, they just stay in the ether space. But feel free to reach out. We're here for you to create something of value that's something you're interested in. So if there's something here that you want us to talk about that we haven't talked about, reach out, tell us about it. Thanks again for taking the time out of your day to listen to us. Welcome to Season 10 of Inside My Canoe Head. You're in for an incredible ride. Grab a hold, take care, and stay safe.